Last November, we made an episode discussing the weird evolution of Dwayne Johnson's movie career, how he had flattened out his acting persona until his movies simply became a bland, lifeless extension of his overall brand, glorified commercials for his many businesses. And then, just a few weeks later, the news broke that Johnson would be starring in a drama from A24, written and directed by Benny Safdie. This would be the first step outside his comfort zone and the first attempt to make real art in over a decade. And a few months later, he returned to professional wrestling and started doing something that seemed unimaginable, playing a villain. And I'm not even a wrestling guy, but I couldn't stop watching clips of this. It's some of the best work he's ever done and genuinely really exciting. Now, I am absolutely not suggesting that I had anything to do with this. I am, at best, a mid-tier internet video essayist. If Dwayne Johnson is taking career advice from me, well, that would actually, that'd be really cool. But the point is, he's not. But these positive developments got me thinking. Maybe things are starting to look up. Here's some trivia about me. I'm a glass half full kind of guy. You may not have realized that from some of the videos I made last season, like about how cinema is being invaded by AI, turning into personal branding, being reduced by the content mindset, and generally dying. Wow, I was not in a good place back then. But ultimately, I'm an optimist. And if I see that things are slowly but surely changing for the better, I'm gonna acknowledge it. Lately, audiences are watching more original movies than they have in years. The industry is turning against AI. Most studios are pulling back on making movies exclusively for streaming. And more people are joining my war against the word content, which is great. But all that said, I'm also a realist, and I know that these could just be fleeting exceptions to an industry that has changed pretty significantly over the last few years, thanks in large part to the superhero movie genre, a trend that is obviously still around. Dwayne Johnson's buddy and fellow actor brand Ryan Reynolds is starring in Deadpool and Wolverine this summer, which will probably make $1 trillion and make people lose their minds over a cameo by like the old Reed Richards or something. So the superhero movie is clearly not dead. But it's also not what it was just a few years ago. At the end of 2018, an Aquaman movie made over $1 billion. And a few months later, so did Captain Marvel, a movie about a character that mainstream audiences had never even heard of. Every Marvel Studios release was a cultural event. And when Warner Brothers released a smaller scale movie about a lesser known character like Shazam, it still made back more than 3 times its budget. If a superhero movie played in theaters, people went to see it. For over a decade, it was a formula for printing money. More and more movies kept being pumped into an overcrowded field, creating a bubble. And if we know anything about bubbles, it's that they are resilient and never burst. That's why millennials just can't stop buying houses. Obviously, I'm kidding, and I think you and your 6 roommates know that. In 2018, 6 of the top 10 highest grossing films worldwide were superhero movies. Last year, that number was down to 2. The Aquaman sequel made about 1/3 as much money as the first movie, and the Captain Marvel sequel made almost $1 billion less, giving the studio its first genuine flop. Of the 8 superhero movies released last year, all but 2 of them were commercial disappointments. These days, audiences feel about superhero movies the way they did about Jamie Kennedy in the early 2000s. That was fun for a while, but we've had enough. Look, superhero movies obviously aren't going away entirely, but they're no longer a sure thing, and it feels like a shift is happening. The idea of superhero fatigue has been argued to death, but it was actually Guardians of the Galaxy director James Gunn who said it best last year in an interview with Rolling Stone. I think there is such a thing as superhero fatigue. I think it doesn't have anything to do with superheroes. It has to do with the kind of stories that get to be told. If it becomes just a bunch of nonsense on screen, it gets really boring. But I get fatigued by most spectacle films, by the grind of not having an emotionally grounded story. It doesn't have anything to do with whether they're superhero movies or not. It's fair to say that there have been too many superhero movies, but the bigger issue is there have been too many bad ones, or too many that just feel the same, which has unfortunately been the case with Marvel's cinematic slate and its glut of streaming shows. For years, the box office king, now it doesn't have the same relevance or appeal that it once did. 7 months ago, we pointed the finger at Marvel Studios and accused them of being part of an extremely convoluted conspiracy to murder cinema. And now that their reign has seemingly ended, surely we have an easy answer for what comes next, right? Well, maybe it's still the early days of what we're seeing, a new post-Marvel phase of Hollywood cinema. But there might be some clues about what to expect. And as much as I would love to believe that Barbie and Oppenheimer might usher in a new golden age of mainstream auteur-driven cinema, that is not how Hollywood works. The studios are always going to make the safest bets and try to find dependable tentpole movies because ultimately, what they want to make most is profit and make sure those quarterly reports look good. So it's only a matter of time before they find their next cash cow. So what will they turn to next? That is the question that we are here to answer today. Folks, it's mystery time.
Hey, Patrick.
Hey, what's up?
I was just doing a tour of the studio so we can get loaded in for Nobbles in the morning. The mustache. Are you doing another one of those cinema's dying videos?
No, not this time. I was actually just talking about how these days cinema's doing better.
Okay, because I don't mind the bummer stuff. The Nihilism actually selling pretty well. If you want to keep that going for a while.
No, not this season. This season we're keeping things positive. Wait, what did you say about Nobbles on a set?
Oh yeah, Nobbles has the studio booked out for the next month. He's filming his new sitcom, Bright Lights, Big Nobbles. They're loading in tomorrow morning.
Wait, so does that mean that I can't shoot my videos here for a month? What am I supposed to do? Shoot them vertically on my phone like a TikToker?
God, no, you don't have to stoop that low. No, I'm thinking maybe go on vacation, go travel, see the world, sit on a beach somewhere, read a book about other eras of cinema and how they died. Look, I don't know, I just need the studio back. So if you could just go. And take everything with you. If you leave anything behind, they're gonna throw it away.
Not my Poochie! This episode is brought to you by Mubi. Sign up at the link in the description to get 30 days of great cinema for free. Hello and welcome back to the show. This is apparently our last episode in the studio for a little while, so let's make it count. Today, we're gonna be looking at one of the biggest mysteries in modern cinema. But here's the kicker. It's a mystery that hasn't happened yet.
Are we doing a minority report? Are we gonna get precogs on the show?
Emma, where are we gonna get precogs? Those only happen when children are born with Renning syndrome as a result of a maternal addiction to the fictional drug Neuroin. Which reminds me, kids, don't do Neuroin. Like I said, today we're solving a mystery that hasn't happened yet. which means we're gonna need to go deeper than a cheap Hercule Poirot impression. So let's get rid of this.
No, Patrick, we could have sold that on AuthenticYouTubeProps.com.
There's no time to cry over a lost $3. Emma, we have a future mystery to solve. Get the divination box. Yeah, put it right here. Thank you. See, who needs futuristic technology to predict the future when you have a method developed by French occultists in the 18th century? Tarot cards. So, all right, let's see what's coming after superhero movies. And cards, let's keep it positive. I don't want to see the death card anywhere. First, the High Priestess. Interesting. Next up, the Knight of Cups. Terrence Malick would love this. And finally, the Devil. Well, I think we all know what this means.
Yes, of course we do.
Of course. Video game adaptations. This one should be obvious. While I would argue they still don't have the cultural significance that movies do, in terms of sheer numbers, video games have become the most popular form of media in the world. In recent years, the game industry's revenue dwarfs Hollywood. Like superhero movies, they have a built-in audience of repeat customers, and that audience has proven they are very willing to part with their money for a new version of something they love. So here we have tons and tons of IP with built-in audiences aimed at young males and ready to be turned into PG-13 rated action movies. And hey, video games have already proven to be successful source material, regardless of what some imaginary curse might say. In recent years, the Sonic the Hedgehog movies have been big enough hits to get a spin-off streaming show about Knuckles the Echidna. A few years ago, we got a new movie based on based on and there's currently a sequel in development. And this August, Lionsgate will release Eli Roth's Borderlands, starring Cate Blanchett. An insane sentence to say out loud. Detective Pikachu and Uncharted were both solid hits. Five Nights at Freddy's made a lot of money on a pretty small budget. And of course, as we are all aware, last year, the Super Mario Bros. Movie was a massive blockbuster, grossing over $1 billion. So now, inevitably, there are so many video game adaptations in development, like a truly stupid amount. Look at all of these things. There are sequels to basically everything I just mentioned, plus movies based on Minecraft and The Sims. And no joke, even classy indie studio A24 is getting in on the action with an adaptation of Hideo Kojima's Death Stranding. And I genuinely have no idea what that's gonna look like, other than that it'll probably have Norman Reedus in it. So yeah, these are big properties, it's a no-brainer to adapt them, but the question I keep running into is, do people actually like these movies? Mario was obviously a colossal hit. It provided comforting, familiar nostalgia for audiences of all ages who love the Mario games. And very importantly, last spring, it was the only kids movie in theaters for months, so it just got to run the table there. But beyond that one Jack Black song, it doesn't seem like it's lingered in the culture at all. Like, this is just anecdotal, but the most enthusiasm I've seen, even from the biggest Mario fans I know, is some variation of, yeah, it was like pretty fun, and it was nice to see all the references, like, you know, the cat suit. So yeah, everyone went to see it, but there doesn't seem to be that much enthusiasm, and I wonder what that means for the sequels that are coming. The most successful live-action video game movie is still Detective Pikachu, which made $450 million worldwide, and it's also the best reviewed one of these, with a 53% on Metacritic. So overall, that's like pretty solid, but it's not even close to the success of the first Iron Man back in 2008. Five Nights at Freddy's had a huge opening weekend, but then it dropped off sharply the next week, which is a clear indication of bad word of mouth. People didn't like the movie very much. And it's not like everything based on a video game is an immediate hit. Last summer, Gran Turismo didn't exactly light the box office on fire. Some of these upcoming movies will absolutely make money, but I really don't see them becoming the next MCU. Will people go see a Donkey Kong movie? Yeah. Are people going to be lining up around the block for midnight showings of Donkey Kong 4? I'm skeptical. The most acclaimed video game adaptations so far have actually all been on television. The Last of Us, Arcane, and recently Fallout. The longer form episodic medium allows the creators to build on the world of the games and tell new stories within it, while the movies mostly just have to condense a 20+ hour story into 2 hours and then remove the interactive component. For more on that, see our recent episode about Mario. And look, when fans don't even seem to care about a big budget Halo show, then I really don't think we can call video game adaptations a sure thing. The core of these upcoming adaptations, regardless of which artists end up involved and how much our little soul ends up in them, is that these are all recognizable IP, and a well that the studios can keep returning to now that a few of them have proven successful. And sure, it will eventually run dry like everything else does.
There's that good old Patrick optimism.
Thank you. But in the meantime, while we're definitely going to see more, I don't expect we'll ever get to a point where there are 8 major video game blockbuster movies in 1 year. Now, we're gonna get some hit movies here, but this is not gonna replace the superhero genre for good. You know what? I think we need a second opinion. So let's see what a true psychic powerhouse has to say. As big as Mario was, what was the actual biggest movie of 2023? Barbie. And what was Barbie based on? A toy. So you know what that means. That's right. When you want the answers to the unknown, it pays to go to the OG, the tried and true, a 2018 National Toy Hall of Famer. I'm talking about the Magic 8 Ball. So, Mr. 8 Ball, are toy adaptations the next big thing? Better not tell you now. Don't you be coy with me. Come on, we have a video to make. Yes. So Barbie was much bigger than any of us expected. And Hollywood being Hollywood, it's probably going to learn all of the wrong lessons from its success. So instead of handing the reins of familiar properties to unique filmmakers with the voice and letting them do their thing, the result looks like it's going to be, hey, here are some toys you remember. Isn't it nice? Remembering? There have already been loads of announcements about properties from Mattel and other companies being developed for the big screen, many of which, I gotta say, just don't have the same cultural cachet as Barbie. Like they're planning an American Girl dolls movie, which, sure. But the thing is, they already made a series of made-for-TV American Girl movies in the 2000s. They even released one in theaters, and despite featuring national treasure Stanley Tucci, it only made $17 million. Unless, what if they make this new movie about the American Girl dolls coming to life in a small soldiers type scenario? Yeah, actually, just get Joe Dante to direct it. I'd go see that. But okay, let's see what else is currently in development. So there's Barney, which, sure, why not? He's at least a character. But then there's Hot Wheels, which are just cars. There's Magic 8 Ball, which, no offense, buddy, is just a Magic 8 Ball. There's Uno, which is a card game. Matchbox, also just cars. Viewfinder, which, I guess you could do something like vaguely nostalgic with that, but okay, there's something called Major Matt Mason, and does anyone know who Major Matt Mason is? I don't. Okay, And there's Polly Pocket. Now we're getting somewhere. That's at least a thing, that's a character. And apparently that one is being made by that woman I went to college with. So, good for her. But you know, for every Lego movie, there's a Playmobil movie, which I swear to God is a real movie that I actually saw in a theater in 2019. They're gonna make a Rock'em Sock'em Robots movie, which Real Steel already did better in 2011. And then there's Monopoly, the board game, Monopoly, where you roll dice and buy property and by the end of it, contemplate murdering your entire family. Monopoly. And the funny thing about Monopoly is that they already tried to make it into a movie back in 2010. And back then, they had Ridley Scott attached to direct it from a script by the guys who wrote The People vs. Larry Flint. That sounds wild. That is a movie that I genuinely would love to see. Because what the fuck is it? I talked about this in the Mario and Adaptations episode, but as insane as the idea of adapting a toy into a movie is, they've actually had more success than video games. Because things like this are such a blank slate, when given to good filmmakers, they actually have more room to do something interesting. Clue and the recent Dungeons and Dragons movie are both just fun genre riffs. Barbie and the Lego movie engage with our cultural relationship to the toy and what the toys mean, but they also build completely new stories full of original characters. And it's also worth noting that these successful examples are also all comedies that are able to poke fun at the very idea of making a movie out of a toy. When it's done more seriously, then you get something like Battleship. So does a Hot Wheels movie just end up like another Need for Speed? Just a movie with cars that happens to have a familiar title? Hey, does anyone else remember when Avi Arad, the original guy who ran Marvel Studios, produced a live-action movie based on the Bratz dolls? Because I swear to God, that's a real thing that happened. Personally, I'm waiting for a Connect 4 movie. But even once that's announced, I'm really not so sure that people are gonna flock to theaters to see it just because they played that game occasionally as a kid. Like, it's the same thing for Uno and Monopoly and a lot of the other things I just mentioned, because none of them are quite as culturally ubiquitous as Barbie already was. Barbie is a thing that, you know, millions and millions of women do have an emotional connection to from their childhoods. And hey, I am totally open to being proven wrong, and it would be pretty funny if I was, and if a movie based on Pictionary won the Oscar for Best Adapted Screenplay. I think there's a pretty good chance that we'll get like a few more surprisingly fun, surprisingly interesting movies based on toys, but I don't see Mattel or Hasbro ever becoming a reliable franchise. Like, even the Lego movies quickly ran out of steam, and Barbie apparently isn't even getting a sequel because Greta Gerwig and Margot Robbie don't want to do it, which I love, especially because I'm sure it makes David Zaslav absolutely furious. So what do you think, Magic 8 Ball? Is it best to just leave Barbie alone? No? So wait, so you want more sequels? Yes? So you're all in on toy movies? Definitely? Are you kidding me? Do you really think audiences are gonna want like a decade of Polly Pocket movies?
Patrick, are you seriously fighting with an inanimate object?
You're right, I'm an idiot. Why am I asking someone who's clearly biased? Fuck off, you dumb ball. Look, if we want to know what's going to happen, we shouldn't be asking a device that has an inflated ego because of an upcoming movie they're going to be in. We should ask a divination source that has already had its own successful movie series. I'm talking about the Ouija board. This here is the perfect divination tool to ask, a tool who's been around Hollywood for years.
Patrick, you seem to think these tools are alive.
Oh, of course they're not alive. I'm just pretty sure that the spirits inside them are.
Well, in that case, I loved you in The Exorcist.
All right, let's give this a shot. So Ouija board, tell us what will be the next big thing in movies. J A K E T Jacket. Jake T. Ghost Jake, can you please? This is serious.
But it's a Ouija board. I'm a ghost. Ouija board, ghost, come on.
Okay, let's try it again. What will be the next big thing in movies? L E G A C. Oh my god, this is taking forever. Ouija board, are you spelling legacy sequels? Yeah, okay. Emma, can you just take it over there? I got it from here. For some reason, Hollywood is still reviving franchises for reboots and legacy sequels, even when those franchises have a history of not actually being profitable outside of the first few movies. Like, did anybody see The Exorcist Believer? Did you know that it actually came out last fall? Well, don't worry, because we're gonna get a couple sequels to that as well. Don't get me wrong, it can be great when a filmmaker gets to revisit certain stories or characters after several years, like George Miller with Mad Max Fury Road and now Furiosa. But when you take that element away, what exactly do you have left? Like, I'm famously a big Matrix guy, but all of the sequels were extremely divisive. And the last one, a movie that I love, was a major commercial disappointment. But now Warner Brothers is working on a new one. And this time it doesn't even have the basic appeal of the original filmmakers coming back. So at this point, like, it's just a logo. It's like these execs are greenlighting these projects going, well, audiences might not actually like this thing anymore, but at least they've heard of it. Over the past couple decades, Hollywood has constantly gone back to the well of properties from the 1980s. Back in 2007, Transformers launched one of the biggest franchises of the century. But recently, these have become less reliable. In 2008, Indiana Jones 4 was a massive hit despite its mixed reception. But last year, the fifth Indiana Jones was a big commercial disappointment that lost Disney $130 million. The aforementioned Transformers has been on a downswing for the past decade, with the latest installment making less than half of what the series did back in 2014. And the last G.I. Joe movie from just a few years ago was a huge bomb. And yet, as confirmed at CinemaCon last month, Paramount is still moving forward with plans for a Transformers G.I. Joe crossover movie. And while I'm on that topic, I just want to say, as someone who has never been into Transformers or G.I. Joe, they were both from a bit before my time, if you really want to adapt those well and get people excited, what you should really look at are the recent comics from Image and Skybound, like Daniel Warren Johnson's Transformers book, or Duke and Void Rivals. These comics are awesome. They are the first time in my life that I have ever cared about these properties. So if you made those into movies, I'd see them. So anyway, even if these 80s IP reboots are often unreliable, a couple of years ago, Top Gun Maverick was such a phenomenon that now we're in this period where studios would murder their firstborn to be able to reproduce it. Sometimes studios will revive an IP from the 80s that wasn't even actually a hit at the time, in this strange hope that maybe decades of home video grew this cult following of billions of people who will now show up to watch a new one, which is how we got Blade Runner 2049. A movie that I think is fantastic, that was also a big flop. It's how we got the Willow TV series that Disney Plus canceled after just one season. Yes, the first two Terminators were hits, but basically every Terminator revival for the past 20 years has been a disappointment. And of course, there are the countless 80s remakes that have failed, like RoboCop, and Total Recall, and Poltergeist. There's a new Tron coming soon, even though the previous two movies were at best minor successes with a small cult audience, and this one doesn't even have Daft Punk doing the music. But it does have Jared Leto? Okay, so I went through and looked at all the highest grossing movies of the 80s that have not yet received legacy sequels. And so, in case any executives from major studios are watching this, here are some free ideas. So, a sequel to On Golden Pond, but this time on Platinum Pond. Got shinier. Stripes, First Blood. Flashdance Says, $S. Police Academy, Legacy. Witness 2, Day of the Mennonites. John Book is back. Harrison Ford still alive and kicking. Rain Men, Monsoon Season. This next one is obvious. 4 Men and a Baby. We all loved Tom Hanks in Big, but now he's bigger. Okay, and finally, and I think this one has some Oscar potential as well, Driving Mr. Daisy. Okay, yeah, and looking at these, somehow, miraculously, E.T. has managed to go without any kind of sequel or spin-off or remake, and let's pray that it stays that way. This summer, we're getting Twisters, a reboot legacy sequel to Twister. But instead of emphasizing like lore and mythology from the first movie and bringing in CGI Bill Paxton, it's just another movie about tornadoes that happens to have the same title, which is oddly refreshing. Looking down the list of all the movies coming from major studios in the next few years, it's still all about the familiar. Sometimes with the appearance of an upgrade, but not always. The Alien franchise used to be about following one main protagonist to a new place each time. And there's a new Alien movie coming out this summer. But this time the pitch seems to be just, well, it's Alien again, except without anyone you know. It feels like studios are stalling for time and just greenlighting reboots that might do okay, but that they know no one is really excited for. We're about to get another live-action Lion King, a live-action How to Train Your Dragon, a live-action Moana alongside an animated sequel, an Ocean's prequel but without Steven Soderbergh, somehow a Face Off sequel. Okay, I'm actually curious about that one. Another I Am Legend, Paddington in Peru but without Paul King. Please be good. Karate Kid, Jurassic something universe, I don't know. The Naked Gun. Did you know there's a new Beverly Hills Cop movie coming out in July? I didn't, but don't worry, it's not gonna be in theaters. It'll be on Netflix. Okay, there's also Toy Story 5, a new Riddick movie, a new Passion of the Christ. Didn't he die in the first one? A Freaky Friday sequel. Oh, and Amazon recently announced plans to reboot all of the IP they got when they bought MGM, including RoboCop, Stargate, Legally Blonde, and Barbershop. That was all in one announcement, by the way. Oh, and of course, the one that I am the most excited for, Boondock Saints 3. You know, I'm at this point, maybe more superhero movies isn't the worst thing in the world.
The Ouija board just keeps saying more sequels are the way to go. And it keeps name-dropping Mike Flanagan, like, we get it, you have cool friends.
If only there was a way to predict the future without dealing with dumb mystical spirits. And ideally, it was also a nice, refreshing beverage.
I've been waiting for you to say that. I have right here.
I've got it. Of course, here it is. Emetasiography, or the reading of tea leaves. If you ask me, the perfect divination method if you have a scratchy throat from talking to a camera all day. Plus, the soothing herbal blend will help calm my nerves, which it looks like I'm gonna need because the leaves are predicting. No, wait, please don't go anywhere, okay? Hear me out. Look. If there's anyone who's been critical of these movies over the years, it's me. Hell, the main reason I have a career doing this is because I made this video back in 2016. And even as someone who grew up reading comic books and still goes to the comic book shop every week, my outlook on the movies has been, shall we say, tempered a bit. And besides, the genre isn't really going anywhere even despite its recent flops. Last year, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 and Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse were both huge hits, as was The Batman the year before that, and James Gunn, one of the few filmmakers who was actually able to make unique personal films within Marvel's producer-driven factory-like system, is now running DC Films and overseeing a new slate of projects, including his own Superman movie, which I'm really looking forward to. And so we're bound to get a few gems somewhere along the way. And with upcoming movies like Beyond the Spider-Verse, the aforementioned Deadpool and Wolverine, and whatever Avengers 5 and 6 end up being, audiences are probably going to make their way back and turn at least some of these into major events, even if it's just for the cameos and crossovers. So really, it's in our best interest to hope these movies are good. Marvel already appears to have slowed their output, thank God, with more of a focus on quality than quantity. If anything, the decreased demand for superhero movies might actually lead to fewer and better ones, since audiences have clearly become more discerning. Like Gunn said, if it becomes just a bunch of nonsense on screen, it gets really boring. But also earlier this month, Disney CEO Bob Iger clarified that this new plan for quality over quantity still means releasing 2 or 3 Marvel movies per year, which is kind of a lot for one franchise. The 2 highest grossing superhero movies from last year, Guardians and Spider-Verse, were also by far the best ones. They felt the most unique, and they continued stories that people cared about with beloved characters. In this post-Endgame world, so much of Marvel's output has felt directionless. You and I might know that this is all heading towards some big multiverse crossover, but general audiences are being asked to care about mediocre stories that just might be vaguely connected somehow. The connections or potential connections clearly aren't enough anymore, and there are only so many actors from mid-2000s Fox movies you can bring back. Guardians Volume 3, which was a simple, direct sequel in one series and partially inspired by a totally separate comic that James Gunn just happened to like, did far better than Ant-Man 3, which promised to launch this whole new era or phase or zone or whatever of Marvel Studios. While the Marvels crossed over characters from the movies with TV shows that clearly not everybody had seen and not everybody was interested in. Ironically, the solution might just be to go back to the early 2000s formula. Just last month, the Sam Raimi Spider-Man trilogy was re-released in theaters, and it was a blast to watch that with an audience, with people cheering not just for famous scenes and big action beats, but for sweeping emotional moments and even the occasional kiss. They belonged to an era when these movies weren't just helmed by unique artists with their own vision and style, but they were self-contained stories first and foremost, with the sequel setup taking a back seat. And even then, the teases for future installments weren't cameos by characters that you might have read about online, but the promise for more drama between the characters from that movie. Hell, even Deadpool and Wolverine, for all its apparent juvenile humor and fourth wall breaking, seems at least interested in telling a dramatic story about a version of Wolverine who's completely given up. Like, I'm not saying it's going to be Logan again, but maybe it's a start. And of course, it does also have my girl, Cassandra Nova, and I will see anything she's in. She's the best. So yeah, I know this is a low bar, hoping and praying for some hint of soul or originality in the 12th movie in one series that's also meant to be like the 30-somethingth in another, but look, we're working in a system that is increasingly controlled by the
I don't think that tea is calming your nerves. Let me guess, Lop Song?
You're right. All these divination tools keep leading to such gloomy outcomes. I don't know, maybe I am a glass half-empty person. Maybe I should just lean into the nihilism and embrace it. I mean, look, hey, it worked for Trent Reznor. I could be the Trent Reznor of Nebula.
Before you do anything rash, I have one more thing you might want to try. From far distant lands, this is the milk of ancient and powerful beasts. Some say whoever drinks it experiences visions of the future.
Wait, like the worm juice in Dune 2?
Exactly. I figure it's worth a try.
Wait, didn't that almost kill Lady Jessica in that movie? Eh, whatever. As the saying goes, over the lips, let the boy know, look out tummy, the spice must flow. Emma, it worked. I saw a vision, a new, more positive vision of a version of Hollywood where I'm actually hopeful about what's happening. Where the new development is original movies. I know. Like, who would have thought? But look, Oppenheimer was a colossal hit last year, and we can't overlook how big a deal it is that a 3-hour-long historical drama that's mostly just people talking in rooms, that's also rated R and kind of a bummer, was a nearly $1 billion blockbuster that went on to win Best Picture. A statement I see a lot that drives me nuts is when people say, Oppenheimer doesn't really count as an original movie because Christopher Nolan is basically an IP. Well, yeah, that's how things always used to work. A director or a movie star is a familiar name that brings certain expectations based on their past work. And the reason I spent so much time talking about the death of the movie star last year is that this is just how things used to be in Hollywood. And it's kind of how they still are in a lot of places, like India. Sure, filmmakers and movie stars can be compared to brands and franchises, but at the end of the day, when audiences go to see a movie for them, they are showing up for real people with individual voices and styles, or some kind of unique appeal, even if it's just the familiar reliability of someone like Tom Hanks. Because with movie stars, it's not just that audiences like watching them, but that they trust their taste. So stars can get audiences to step outside their comfort zones and watch movies that they otherwise might not. That's how someone like Tom Hanks was able to make a movie like The Green Mile into a blockbuster. As I've already talked about on this channel, in the past 15 years or so, that began to fade away in American cinema, as familiar, recurring characters became more important than the actors, who kinda became replaceable. Apart from Leonardo DiCaprio, there was really no one left in Hollywood who could open a movie to huge numbers based on their name alone. But things seem to finally be changing. Like a little teeny tiny bit. I'm not suggesting that things will ever go back to how they were in the 1970s, where audiences were flocking to depressing dramas, but it feels like there's a bit of excitement in the air. As I write this, Challengers, the sexy R-rated tennis drama from Luca Guadagnino, is the #1 movie in America. A mid-budget production that got financed because Zendaya has proven to be a genuine star, in a way that no actor from the Marvel machine has. Hell, until I said that, I bet some of you even forgot that she was in those Spider-Man movies. That's because she's also in stuff like Dune, the #1 movie of the year so far, which makes Timothée Chalamet the star of the 2 highest grossing movies in the last 10 months. So at this point, I think it's safe to call Timmy a genuine, reliable, bankable star. Almost the entire previous generation of potential movie stars got swallowed up by the franchise machine. But now, it seems like a new generation has emerged, learning from their mistakes and making smart choices. Instead of Marvel movies, it seems like Dune and the HBO show Euphoria are where we're slowly seeing new bona fide stars be born. Between the likes of Chalamet, Austin Butler, Florence Pugh, Zendaya, Jacob Elordi, and Sydney Sweeney. Granted, 2 of those people played Elvis, so maybe that's the secret too. Sweeney spoke recently in an interview about how she largely signed on to the infamous flop Madam Web in order to build a partnership with Sony Pictures and get them to greenlight Anyone But You and her upcoming Barbarella remake. And that is the kind of smart career strategy that honestly gives me hope for this new generation. And speaking of Euphoria stars, with Hunter Schafer in last year's Hunger Games prequel, and the upcoming horror movie Cuckoo, and Yorgos Lanthimos' follow-up to Poor Things, Kinds of Kindness, there's a real possibility that Hollywood could soon have its first trans movie star if she keeps getting cast in high-profile roles. And that's cool. We're seeing more and more instances of original movies doing well in a way that I didn't really think was possible anymore. A24's Civil War was the #1 movie in America for 2 weeks in a row. Anyone But You, a romantic comedy, made over $200 million, which makes it more frustrating that Netflix is going to fuck up the release of Hitman when it seems like Glenn Powell has also become a star that audiences want to go see. And hey, this June we've got The Bike Riders, a cool-looking road drama with a lot of actors that people seem to like. Jodie Comer, Austin Butler, Michael Shannon, Mike Feist, Norman Reedus, and hey, Tom Hardy. So maybe if that's a moderate success, it means things are really, truly starting to look up. Like this past year, Poor Things, a genuinely weird movie, was an actual hit that crossed over to the mainstream. It's starting to feel like audiences are finally eager for something new. And of course, it should be said that none of these movies have been billion-dollar blockbusters, but they also only cost a small fraction of what most blockbusters do. So they're less of a risk for the studios, and they're proving to be profitable. It's interesting looking at the upcoming slates from different studios and seeing how they're responding. Like, despite being run by one of the least likable people in the country, Warner Brothers is actually leaning into this and making a bunch of exciting original movies from major filmmakers like Bong Joon-ho, Ryan Coogler, Clint Eastwood, Paul Thomas Anderson, and David Robert Mitchell. They signed a huge deal with Tom Cruise, and his first movie there is being made with Alejandro Gonzalez Iñárritu. Again, the whole industry is not changing overnight, but all of these developments are good. Also, credit for this should really go to Warner Brothers film chiefs Mike DeLuca and Pamela Abdy, not Zaslav. And hey, later this year, we're getting a movie from director Marielle Heller, the director of A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood, starring Amy Adams, called Night Bitch. I don't know what it's about. I just love that there's going to be a wide release movie in America called Night Bitch. Like, just imagine an old couple in a small town walking up to the ticket window and saying, "2 for Night Bitch, please." I just think that's good for movies. This stuff is amazing. It showed me exactly what I was hoping for. Thank you, Emma, and thank you, giant space worms.
Oh, Patrick, that's not worm juice. I just told you that to get you out of your head. It's nothing more than simple Windex.
Why the fuck would you let me drink Windex?
The blue looked so good on camera. Besides, can't you see? The optimistic predictions were within you all along. You didn't need spirits or cursed objects. Just listen to your heart and you'll know what the next big thing is.
Should I go to the hospital?
Shh. Just predict, Patrick. Predict.
Maybe pirate movies?
What's it?
Yeah, let's go with that. Pirate movies. You know, yo-ho-ho and a bottle of rum, swashbuckling adventure movies. Okay, so let me explain. In the classic comic book Watchmen, an idea that Alan Moore and Dave Gibbons put forth is that in a world with actual real-life superheroes, people would not be interested in reading superhero comic books. And so instead, in the world of that story, the most popular genre in comics is pirates. And so, maybe in this world where people are growing tired of superhero movies, the thing that will supplant them as the dominant genre is pirate movies. I mean, it's not that crazy. Considering what a big deal Pirates of the Caribbean was in the 2000s, it's kinda weird that we haven't gotten any others, right? Like maybe there's years of pent-up hunger in the audience just waiting to explode. We're all sick of multiverse portals now. What people want are treasure chests and parrots and peg legs and the black spot. We used to be a proper country where we would get a new Treasure Island movie like every decade, and we are way overdue for a new one. So yeah, anyway, there's my pitch for pirate movies. It could happen.
Is there anything else?
Let me see. I don't know. Should we see what the Rubik's Cube has to say?
Pass. You should do your closing statement now.
Yeah, Rubik's probably would have said something lame anyway, like movies about math. Pfft, fucking nerd. We spent a lot of time last fall theorizing that maybe cinema is dying. And that video got a lot of views. I hate to admit that Dave the Agent is right, but you freaks love your nihilism. But the truth is that no, the movies are not dying. They're just in an awkward growing period. So what's next after superhero movies? The question you clicked on this video to see answered? Well, honestly, there is no clear answer. Right now, it's like an oil well is starting to run dry, and so the Hollywood studios are frantically digging everywhere to find a new source of oil. Does that analogy make sense? So in the coming years, there will be hit movies based on video games and based on toys, and there'll be more superhero movies and more legacy sequels, and while there'll be hits, also, a bunch of those will inevitably fail as well. I don't think that any of these new things are going to be the guaranteed hit machine that superhero movies have been for the past 20 years, and probably nothing ever will again. At the moment I'm shooting this, it's easy to despair because last weekend The Fall Guy underperformed at the box office. And I know that's not technically an original movie, it's based on an old TV show that I had never heard of before, but for most of the audience, it might as well be an original movie. And the movie's pretty good. It's not trying to set up a cinematic universe, it's just a fun time at the movies carried by great movie stars with genuine romantic chemistry. And yes, it definitely cost more than it should have. Movie star salaries are an issue for another time, but this is the kind of movie that we need more of. A throwback to the kind of charming movie star-driven entertainment that we used to get all the time. But even if it's not going to be a huge blockbuster, people seem to be enjoying it, and everyone who skips it in theaters is gonna watch it on streaming in 6 months and go, shit, I wish I'd seen this in theaters. Why don't we get more movies like this? It's like that James Gray clip that I used in the other video. You have to retrain the audience to go see movies that are a little unfamiliar. You have to get them back in the habit of casual moviegoing. And that's gonna take a little bit of time. Over the past couple of years, I've been reading a lot of film history books, and something that's become very clear to me is that this is all cyclical. Audiences in the 60s got sick of big overblown musicals, and they got excited about edgy, smaller movies that spoke to the anxieties of the time. And then, by the end of the 70s, they got sick of depressing dramas and wanted escapism again. So it's obviously a very different time now, especially with private equity companies as the largest shareholders in all the major studios, and short-term gains for quarterly reports have taken priority over long-term strategy. All that stuff sucks. But even still, this is all cyclical. We're just at the end of one cycle, and it's hard to know if the next one has started yet. So there is a lot that we just don't really know right now. But one thing I do know is that lately, I've actually been feeling more optimistic about the movies than I have in years. But one more thing that I do want to say. If you really want to figure out the future of cinema, what the next big thing is, who the next big filmmakers and actors are gonna be, then you need to be looking outside the mainstream at indie and international movies. That's where the next major people who will be headlining the big studio tentpoles of the future are right now. And the best place to see movies like that is the platform that I think is doing streaming better than pretty much anyone, and that's Mubi, our sponsor for this episode. Mubi is a curated streaming platform where each film is hand-selected, and it's an incredible collection of movies from around the world, with classics from iconic directors to recent film festival breakouts from emerging auteurs. Mubi also releases movies, and they do it, in my opinion, the right way, giving them proper theatrical releases before they go to streaming. These include some of my favorite movies from 2023, like Fallen Leaves and Passages, or the previous year, they've got the latest film from Park Chan-wook, Decision to Leave. One of their latest releases is How to Have Sex, which is a coming-of-age drama from the UK, not an instructional film. It's the first movie from Molly Manning Walker, who I think is gonna be a big deal. I just watched the movie a couple nights ago, and it is fantastic. Highly recommended. And there are so many more great movies on Mubi right now. They've got Frances Ha, Bergman Island, Burning. They have a really early Miyazaki short film that I bet you've never seen. They've got Kelly Reichardt's Certain Women, starring Lily Gladstone, Incendies, Denis Villeneuve's breakout movie. They've got Dario Argento's Opera, one of my favorite horror movies. Armando Iannucci's The Death of Stalin, which absolutely rules. And hey, if you wanna have a fun night, you could do a double feature of David Cronenberg's Crimes of the Future and Ishtar, which I think honestly doesn't sound too bad. Ishtar, no joke, pretty good. Anyway, I love Mubi. I am genuinely a big fan of it. I think they're doing the streaming thing better than just about anyone, and they have the most exciting collection of movies with new ones being added all the time. So if you wanna try it out for yourself, right now you can get 30 days totally free if you just sign up with the link in the description or go to mubi.com/Patrick H. Willems. That's it, Mubi. You know, I feel really good about that episode. It's just a bummer it's gonna be our last one in the studio for a while. Well, I guess it's back to shooting them in my apartment, and by that, I mean Matt's apartment.
You really should start looking for a new place to live.
I know, but all of my money is tied up buying these mystery boxes. You know that. This one has the original V-neck sweater Michael Douglas wore in Basic Instinct.
I wish we could send you on a trip, but Authentic YouTube Props only covers our commute home from the studio.
Maybe I can help. I feel so bad for taking up the studio, and it comes at the worst time for me. I have this luxurious trip to Europe planned and paid for, but I can't go. Patrick, maybe you could go in my place.
Nobbles, that is so kind of you.
Well, let's chill out here. This is only an immediate solution to my problem in the form of a dream vacation. It's not that big a deal.
And you can use my press badge at the Cannes Film Festival.
Okay, fine, Nobbles, if you just stop talking, then yes, I will do you this favor.
Always happy to give where I can. Hey, maybe you can be on an episode of my show sometime.
Nope. I did.
You think he'll actually relax for once while he's in Europe?
I saw him pocket a lav mic and a camera. I'm guessing he'll exhaust himself trying to make 3 or 4 videos out of the trip.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Oh.
It's just the Windex in his system. He'll sleep it off.